Now part of the Darkcast Network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a Dark Side. In September 2019, 2 children disappeared without a trace. 8 months later, they were found. You won't believe where, who did this, and the many, many twists, turns, and murders in this case. It's the case of the cult mom, Lori Vallow, right now on Love and Murder. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to a new episode of Love and Murder, your weekly true crime podcast telling you cases of heartbreak that turn to homicide. I am your host, Kai, and in today's episode, we're discussing a case of disappearances, murders, twists, murders, turns, murders, and more murders. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you to my lambs in Patreon for being a sponsor of Love and Murder, patreon.com/Love and Murder. Be sure to subscribe to Love and Murder right now while you're listening so you don't miss a case. And if you didn't know, you can subscribe to our Patreon that I mentioned before so you don't have to hear intros or commercials. And you'll get extras like Kai's Daily Rants, bonuses, and be a sponsor of Love and Murder. This month's bonus episode is going to be a case of an actress whose boyfriend strangled her to death. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. In the meantime, though, grab your butts, grab your apple juice, and let's get into some Love and Murder. Oh yeah, I forgot. Speaking of apple juice, I've been wanting to introduce y'all to one of my favorite apple juice, and I'm an apple juice connoisseur. Wellesley Farms Organic Honeycrisp Apple Juice from BJ's. Y'all have got to check it out. It is, if you love apple juice the way I love apple juice, and you want to grab your butts and grab your apple juice while you're enjoying Love and Murder, then get that Wellesley Farms Organic Honeycrisp Apple Juice, and you can get that from BJ's. To support Love and Murder, you could actually use this link. It's going to be in the show notes below, but you could use this link to sign up for BJ's, and you'll get $35 off of a 1-year membership by using my link, www.murderandlove.com/BJ's. Now, into the episode. Chad Guy Daybell was born on August 11, 1968 in Provo, Utah. I know I usually tell y'all about their childhood and everything like that, but there's no information about his childhood or the other people that I'm going to be mentioning. On March 9th, 1990, he married Tamara Tammy Douglas, who was born on May 4th, 1970. They got married in Manti, Utah. In 1992, he graduated from Brigham Young University with a bachelor's degree in journalism and worked for a short time as a copy editor for a daily newspaper. Tammy and Chad ended up having 5 children named Garth, Emma, Seth, Leah, and Mark. Chad also worked as a grave digger. This was, after he graduated from college and during college. During that time, he also started writing books. He would write religious-themed fictional books, and his first one was called An Errand for Emma, which was published in 1999. After he wrote that first book, he left his job at the cemetery to more focus on becoming an author, and in 2001, he wrote another book, which was a nonfiction book that talked about his life working in cemeteries, and he named that One Foot in the Grave. Then pushing forward in 2004, Chad founded Spring Creek Book Company so that he could use that to self-publish his own books, which were books about his beliefs and other religious books. He started this book company with a partner named Douglas. That's literally the only name that came up. Douglas, who was also a graphic artist and the manager. Unfortunately, by the end of the 2000s, the family faced financial issues because by this time, Chad's business only made about $2,000 a year. In order to supplement their income and be able to live and survive and support their 5 children, both Tammy and Chad had to work part-time jobs, which Chad went back to being a grave digger, and with the income coming in, they were able to save the publishing company. Once they did that, they kind of changed their marketing tactics and more focused on a different type of writing. This time, doomsday writing. This brought in a plethora of new readers. With that, he actually also brought on other new authors. Most notably was an author named Julie Rowe, who also wrote end of days fiction. By 2010, One of the authors who was under Chad, Suzanne Freeman, stopped working for him because she said his books and his thoughts were actually becoming more radicalized and less focused on like what she would write about or what she would think about. So because of that, they had conflicting views and she decided to stop writing for him. So what his beliefs were becoming was that he was talking about the apocalypse, but he was getting more and more dangerous with the rhetoric he was putting out. Now in 2015, Chad decided to move to Rexburg, Idaho, not for any real reason, but because he said he heard a voice telling him to move there. So he picked up his family, his 5 kids and his wife, and he moved there in June of 2015. Lori Noreen Cox was born on June 26, 1973, in Loma Linda, California. At the age of 19 in 1992, she married her high school boyfriend named Nelson Yanes. However, that marriage didn't last very long, and shortly thereafter, they got a divorce. 3 years later, in 1995, Lori once again married somebody, William Lagioia. I don't know how to say this name. Lagioia? Lagioia. In this marriage, a year after they were married, her and William had a son named Kobe, and then they got divorced in 1998. So that marriage didn't last long either. Then in 2001, Lori married again, so this is for the 3rd time, a man named Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr. Joseph loved Lori and her son Kobe and decided to legally adopt Kobe. They then had their own daughter named Tylee, who was born in 2002. However, once again, that marriage didn't last long and they got divorced in 2005. In February of 2006, Lori got married again. Wow, this woman is just finding love back to back to back to back. She married a man named Leland Anthony Vallow, who went by the name Charles. Where did Charles come from? Leland Anthony Vallow. And I go by Chuck. What? Anyways, so they got married in Las Vegas. Charles had 2 sons from a previous marriage. And remember, Lori has 2 children. She has a daughter and a son right now. So they became a blended family. In 2007, Lori's brother Alex and her 3rd husband Joseph got into an altercation. Alex said he attacked Joseph because he said that he had been abusive to Lori and the children, which... Okay, but she had left him. When did they divorce? 2005? Like 2 years ago? She's remarried now. So why is it now you want to attack him and say, hey, you were abusive to my sister? Anyway, he went to jail for the incident. In 2013, Lori and Charles adopted Charles's grandnephew, whose name was Joshua Jackson Vallow, and he went by JJ. He was actually the grandson of Charles's sister. It doesn't say why they adopted him, like did she die or what happened? It doesn't say why they adopted him, but he went ahead and adopted him. So now they have 5 children. Everyone said Lori was really, really patient with JJ and a really good mother to him. And I want to note that JJ had autism. So there's different spectrums of autism. It doesn't really explain what spectrum he was on. Did he have severe autism or just very light autism? It just says that he was autistic. In late 2014, the family then moved to Kauai, Hawaii. I wonder why they just decided to move there. It doesn't give any reason or anything. They just decided to move to Hawaii. Maybe they're just tired of the cold? Not really, because right now they're in Las Vegas. Maybe they're tired of the desert? I don't know. Either way, they just moved. In 2015, Lori found an author that she really liked, and his name was Chad Daybell. She really liked his Doomsday series and started becoming an avid reader and a really huge fan of his. In 2016, the family then moved back to Arizona. So I guess they got tired of island life and moved back to the desert. So they're back in Arizona now. And in 2017, people started noticing that Lori's relationship with her children had started to change. Then in 2018, Lori's 3rd husband, Joseph, was later found dead in his apartment from a heart attack. Because Lori was listed as his next of kin, she was notified. However, nobody told his family until 5 weeks later because no one had claimed a body by that time. I guess she figured, this is my ex, why are you telling me? But I mean, she could have had the common decency to at least call his family and let them know. Or if she didn't want to hear from them, she didn't want to talk to them, she could have told the police or whoever, hey, you can call these people and let them know that his body's there or something. Common decency, but I guess she had other things on her mind and other things that she was doing, because in the fall of 2018, Lori met Chad for the first time at a Preparing a People's event. That's the name of the event, Preparing a People. Chad took one look at Lori and he said, "Hey, mama, you know what? I think we've been married in 7 previous lifetimes." And she said, yeah, that sounds about logical and not crazy at all to me. Let's keep talking in private and not let our spouses know. So a little while after that, Charles ended up going on a business trip, which opened up a whole new world for Lori, because she was like, hey, you know who can come over? The crazy man I met at Preparing a People event. So with 5 children in her house and her husband gone on a business trip, Lori decided to have an overnight gathering at her house, in which she invited Chad and one of her and her husband's close friends, Melanie Gibb. At the event, Chad talked up Lori and shared his religious beliefs that, remember, they said was becoming really radicalized. He claimed to all these people in attendance that he had lived 31 different lives on different planets, and said that Lori had 21 separate lives of her own, and 5 of those 21 lives coincided with his own experiences on Earth. Everybody in attendance didn't run screaming for the hills. Surprisingly, they sat and listened to what he had to say, especially Lori. For some reason, this left Lori fascinated with him, like she was really enamored with him. A guy telling her that he lived 81 different lives, and 2 of them were on the planet Mars, and 16 of them were on Jupiter, and 12 of them were on the planet Glurp Glurp. And you lived with me in 5 of them only on Earth. Fascinated her. So after this, she really started to really talk to Chad and learn about whatever he was teaching with his fanatical writings. Then on December 5th, 2018, Chad and Lori recorded together on the Preparing a People podcast, and Chad later ended up staying at her house while her husband was there. I guess maybe she said, hey, we got a podcast to do together, and, maybe he doesn't want to drive back and forth, so can this guy named Chad, who you know nothing about, and I'm pretty sure he hasn't opened his mouth, because if he opened his mouth to tell you his beliefs that I'm somehow fascinated with, you would kick him out of the house saying, this is a crazy person and I don't want this person around my children. Can he stay here? So with leaving all of that out, she said, hey, we're doing a podcast. Can he stay here for a couple of nights? And Chad ended up staying at the residence. So with everything that he was believing, which was, as this article told me, was a, quote, Mormon-influenced apocalyptic belief, he went about talking about it on numerous podcasts, writing books about it. This is the same radicalized belief system that previous author left him for. So now he's really talking about it, expanding about it, opening up about it. And a lot of people, including Lori, are following him in this. And even Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreau, started following what Chad believed in. Now, not only was it about 50 different world jumping, I guess, and whatever else he said, but he also believed in zombies. And from what everybody else was saying, the things that he started saying and how he was captivating people, they said it started becoming more like a doomsday cult. So he was becoming culty, and the people around him were following and said cult. Later, Melanie would disclose that she had heard Chad and Lori talking about the zombies that I told you about, basically saying Chad said that zombies were, quote, people whose souls were replaced by dark spirits. This is what he was saying. And a little while after that conversation took place, one of Lori's friends, April Raymond, said that Lori started referring to her husband as, quote, a demon. By February 2019, Lori went up to Charles and was like, look, this is what she said, quote, she no longer cared about him or JJ. She told him, look, I didn't want to tell you this. I didn't want to be the one to bear this bad news to you, but, quote, I'm the reincarnated wife of Joseph Smith, end quote. And then she left. She just left after she said that. And she was not seen again for 58 days. And the reason why I know she didn't tell him what Chad had said and what Chad believed and what Chad was ranting about around his children was because when she told him this and ran away, he became really worried and went to the police about, I think my wife is losing her mind. He told the police that Lori thought that she was preparing for the end of days. And he said that she also told him that she was going to murder him. Then right after he went to the police with these concerns, he filed for divorce. In the reason why he was getting divorced, he put on the application, quote, threats to my life, as well as a theft of $35,000 from our joint bank account and the theft of my truck. He also sought a protective order against Lori. On July 11th, 2019, Charles went to the house where Lori had been living with her children because he was supposed to be dropping off their son JJ at school. Now, riddle me this. Why is your son with her after you said she was crazy and she wants to kill you and she's preparing for what she says is the end of days? And then you leave your son with her? You got a restraining order against her, but then you leave your son with her? I'm confused. But anyways, when he went inside the house to pick up JJ, he was immediately shot by Alex. Alex said, look, I did this out of self-defense and defense of my sister because I confronted him about abusing my sister, and Charles, from out of nowhere, pulled a bat out of his butthole and started beating me with it. So I went and got the gun. All the while he's beating me, I went and then got the gun and then shot him to defend myself. That sounds like it makes sense, right? Yeah? Okay, I'm sticking with that story. And when police questioned the witnesses, who were Lori and Tylee, they said, yeah, we heard the shooting, and yeah, that's what happened. So police said, well, open and shut case, Johnson. That completely made sense to us. We have the witnesses here. No holes in the story. We're done here. Want to go grab a burger over at Barney's? Have a great day, ma'am. Clean up that mess. That blood there just needs to go. That's unsightly. I mean, how did they just let that go? Like, the story didn't even make sense. Anyways, the reason why Charles had JJ over at Lori's house was because of his autism. He felt that JJ needed a consistent routine and he didn't want to break that routine. So that's why he still had him with Lori. He was also concerned about Tylee, and he did want to file for custody of her, but she's not his. And he hadn't legally adopted her, so there was nothing he could do for her. He was really trying to just watch out for his child. Again, he wanted to watch out for Tylee, but legally there was nothing he can do. Then a month after he asked for the divorce, he had actually withdrew the petition of divorce, saying that, quote, he wanted to try to make the marriage work. Then I guess he went over to the house and the brother shot him dead. Then in September, Lori decided to move. Guess where she moved? Closer to Chad. She picked up from Chandler, Arizona, and moved all of her kids to Rexburg, Idaho. Her brother, Alex, moved right along with her. Then on September 8th, Lori, JJ, Tylee, and Alex went to Yellowstone National Park. I guess they just wanted to do a family trip. And then on September 22nd, Melanie had come up with her boyfriend, David Warwick, to visit the family. And she said on the night of September 22nd, she saw Alex carry JJ into Lori's apartment. And the next morning, she was like, where's JJ? And speaking of which, where's Tylee? Now, you know I had to leave you on a cliffhanger to remind you that you should join one of our Lamb supporters clubs. And for season 4, you actually have 3 options to do that. Either patreon.com/Love and Murder, Spotify, or Spreaker. All of the links are in the show notes below. And as an exclusive Lamb, you get intro and commercial-free episodes so you don't get this interruption. And bonus episodes like Daily Kai Rants and monthly bonuses. If you join via Patreon, you get even more options like case extras. So you'll get the pictures from this case, court notes, videos, everything like that. And options for even more bonus episodes. I'm working on building my exclusive group up to 500 lambs by the end of season 4, and I am counting on your help. I am asking for your help. All of the links are in the show notes below, or you could join at patreon.com/loveandmurder. At Patreon, you get all of these bonuses starting only at $3 a month donation. Come on over, patreon.com/loveandmurder. We're all waiting on you.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a true crime fanatic.
I'm Dan, and I don't know anything about true crime.
Together, we host Fuck That, a true crime podcast that covers cases that highlight important topics that are often overlooked, such as wrongful convictions, domestic violence, and social inequities, sprinkled in with the occasional case with spooky themes. If you are looking for your next true crime fix delivered candidly with a hint of sarcasm, you can listen and subscribe to bi-weekly episodes of Fuck That wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter at FThatPod and at FThat_pod on Instagram.
And now, back to the show. So when Melanie's asking about the children, Lori said that JJ was, quote, being a zombie and that Alex had to take him away. And same with Tylee, she was being a zombie too. So Melanie was like, okay. And that was it, moved about her business. On October 9th, police received a 911 call from Tammy, reporting that she was being shot at in her driveway by a masked man in a Jeep. She wasn't able to see his face, but she did describe the Jeep to police, and the Jeep actually matched one that Charles had bought before he died. 10 days later, on October 19th, police received another 911 call from Chad's house, stating that Tammy had gone to bed the previous night with, quote, a terrible cough, and it looks like she died in her sleep. Can we get somebody out here, please? So when police arrived, they asked Chad what happened. He repeated himself, and they asked the son, Garth Daybell, what happened. And Garth had the same exact story as his father, that, yeah, his mom had gone to bed coughing that night, and then they woke up, and she just wouldn't wake up. So I think she just died in her sleep, and then that's when him and his dad called 911. So police said she died of natural causes, and her body was not autopsied because Chad said that was against his beliefs, so the coroner had to accept that and couldn't autopsy her. About 2 weeks later, on November 5th, Lori and Chad got married on a beach in Hawaii. While they were in Hawaii, they were in a gated community, and for that time period, I guess while they were on their honeymoon, they lived off of Chad's life insurance money from Tammy. Later on in that month, JJ's grandmother, which was Charles's sister, Kay Vallow Woodcock, called police for a welfare check because she said she hadn't heard from JJ in months. So on November 26th, police went over to Lori's townhouse in Rexburg and did a welfare check on JJ. When they asked Lori where JJ was, she said that he was at a family friend's house in Arizona. And that family friend's name is Melanie Gibb. But when police called Melanie and asked where JJ was, she said, I haven't seen JJ for months. That night, a neighbor saw Lori and Alex packing a truck outside of her house. And the next day, police and FBI arrived to search the house. And nobody was there. It was completely abandoned. Chad's house was also searched by investigators. Later on, Melanie called police back and confessed to them that Lori and Chad had called her before the police initially called her and asked her to lie and say that JJ was with her, but she had absolutely refused to do that. So when police were trying to find JJ, they actually got another surprise. That's when they found out Tylee was missing as well. So on December 21st, they actually put out a bulletin saying 2 children were missing, Tylee and JJ. Also in December, police decided to exhume and examine Tammy's body. Due to extenuating circumstances, they weren't going to take Chad's word for it anymore. So while that's happening, from December to January, investigators really ramped up searching for these 2 children. They also looked into Tammy's death, and they also tried to find where Chad and Lori had disappeared to. While all this is going on, JJ's grandparents and everybody are just pleading with Chad and Lori to return the children. They even offered them $20,000 in reward to bring the children back. When investigators finally found Chad and Lori, guess where they were? They were in Hawaii, back in that house that they were staying in for their honeymoon. I guess they bought it. So they were in a gated community in Hawaii, living off of Tammy's money. They hired a lawyer, and the lawyer issued statements saying that, quote, Chad Daybell was a loving husband and he has the support of his children in this matter. And Lori was a devoted mother who resents assertions to the contrary. The lawyer also said, quote, addressing the allegations once they have moved beyond speculation and rumor. So basically he's saying that these are all lies. You're speculating and you're tarnishing this woman and this man's name. In the same month, shockingly, Alex died in Arizona, and it was determined that he died of natural causes as well. Finally, authorities found a storage locker in Rexburg that had been rented by Lori in October 2019. In that locker, once they got it open, they discovered belongings of Tylee's and JJ's, which included clothes, bikes, and pictures, which were items that had been left behind when Lori just left Rexburg. So basically, she packed up her stuff. Remember, it was her and her brother who packed up everything. She packed up her stuff, left the kids' stuff, and then moved to Hawaii. Police confiscated the surveillance video and saw that Lori and her brother were moving items in and out of the storage locker before she left for Hawaii. On January 25th, Lori was served with an order to produce her children. Give us the children now. After failing to comply, on February 20th, Lori was arrested in Hawaii, and because she faced charges in Madison County, Idaho, she was actually extradited 2 weeks later. The charges she was facing included 2 felony counts of desertion and non-support of dependent children, as well as 3 misdemeanors. When she was arrested in Hawaii, her bail was initially set at $5 million. However, when she was extradited to Ohio, they lowered it to $1 million. In May, she appeared in court to request that her bail be lowered further, and the judge said, fuck no. So she was like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and pay this $1 million. But none of the local bond companies wanted to work with her. They were like, no, that's okay. My light bill ain't due yet. I don't need your money. But sir, your light is off. I know. I don't need your money. No. Where are your kids, by the way? While you worried about my lights, where are your 2 kids? On March 24th, an NBC News reported that Chad and Lori had become convinced that Tylee and JJ were, quote, possessed and had become, quote, zombies. So all this while, police are trying to get records of, phone locations, GPS, all of that. So they finally got Alex's phone GPS. And it showed that on September 8th, he was at the Yellowstone National Park. And police said this is the last known photo of Tylee. So this is around the time that she disappeared. Then on September 9th, which is the day after Tylee disappeared, they said that Alex's phone GPS placed him at Chad's backyard, which is 2 hours away from where Lori lives. So what's he doing there? He stayed there about 14 minutes and then he left. After he left, Chad texted his wife and said, quote, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. End quote. What? Then on September 23rd, which was the day after, remember, Melanie had seen JJ, so that's basically the last known reported date that anyone had seen JJ. Investigators said that Alex's cell phone showed that once again he was in Chad's backyard, and this time he was there for only 17 minutes. So why is he continuously in Chad's backyard, which is 2 hours away from where he lives? Then they found out that while Lori and Chad were living in Hawaii, they were telling people that Tylee had died in 2017 and that Lori had no other minor children. And now if you think about it, remember they got married on November 5th, which, like I said, was 2 weeks after Tammy had died. And now only 2 months after her children are missing. So shouldn't you have been worried about where your children were? And he should have been mourning the death of his wife. Y'all are marrying that soon after? So then on June 9th, FBI, the Rexburg Police, and the Fairmont County Sheriff's Office went to Chad's home and all of his property. They started digging up this backyard that Alex's phone kept pinging in, and sadly, they found human remains that was buried there. But this was supposed to be a pet cemetery. This is what he said. But why is a human skull in here and a human femur and a thigh bone and whatever else? The human remains that investigators found in the, quote, pet cemetery were actually Tylee's. And then JJ had been found, his remains had been found buried about 50 yards away under a tree. This is the same location that Chad had referenced to Tammy in the text about the raccoon, remember? Wow. I wonder if she knew. Chad was arrested later that day for obstruction or concealment of evidence. They were like, either one, you're arrested, come with us, we don't care. And then he was later charged with felony murder. His bail was set at $1 million. On July 2nd, prosecutors dropped 2 charges against Lori, which was the desertion and non-support of dependent children, because you about to be charged with obstruction and concealment of evidence regarding your children's remains. Then on July 17th, because the other 2 felony counts against her were dropped, her bond was lowered by Madison County Judge Michelle Mallard, and it was lowered to $50,000 for each charge, totaling $150,000. What? Why would you lower the bond? However, they kept Chad's bond the same at $1 million. Again, why? Why would you lower hers? It's her children. And I mean, I guess circumstantial evidence could point to Chad was the one who dug the grave, but it's her children. A jury trial for Lori was set for January 25th, 2021. However, that was pushed back. Then in February 2021, the autopsy results for Tammy came back, and it was determined that Tammy had been asphyxiated. And no, it wasn't a suicide. So after that, the Fremont County Prosecutor's Office said that they would be handling the case moving forward. And remember, Lori and Chad had been living off of Tammy's life insurance? Well, according to police reports, he had received $430,000 in life insurance payouts. On May 25th, 2021, Chad and Lori were indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception. They charged them for the death of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Lori was also charged with grand theft related to, quote, Social Security survivor benefits. She filed Social Security disability on her children. Wow. Chad also faced an insurance fraud charge, quote, related to a life insurance policy he had on Tammy, for which he was beneficiary and received the funds after her death. Chad also faced the life insurance fraud charge because of the life insurance he got on his wife. On May 27th, remarkably, Lori was suddenly found incompetent and unfit to stand trial, and her case was stayed. In the meantime, she received mental health treatment. Shocking. In June 2021, Lori was indicted by a grand jury in Arizona on 1 count of first-degree murder for the death of Charles Vallow. Lambs. Oh my God. After that, Chad went out and said, I plead guilty to nothing. Not guilty. That is my plea, Your Honor. And prosecutors said, oh yeah, you can plead whatever the frick you want. We are going to seek the death penalty against you. So plead away, have fun. Not guilty by reason of insanity, not guilty because your feet hurt, not guilty because the sun is yellow, not guilty, doesn't matter. We're seeking the death penalty against you. A month later, September 2021, Chad's children went and spoke publicly and told 48 Hours that they believed their father was innocent. Chad's daughter, Emma Murray, says she thinks that Chad was framed by Alex and Lori. Why do you think that? I mean, it's his child, so, to keep her sanity, she has to believe what she believes, so I can't even fault her. On April 11th, 2022, damn, we're all the way into 2022, Judge Stephen Boyce said that Lori was now mentally competent to stand trial. Then they deemed her incompetent again, and then deemed her competent again. Oh my God. On April 19th, after being asked to enter a plea deal multiple times, Lori refused. She absolutely flat out refused to say guilty, not guilty, whatever. So Judge Stephen Boyce said, okay, I'll put in a plea for you. Not guilty. Why wouldn't she plead guilty? Maybe it's a law thing, because I would have said guilty. I guess it makes sense. So he would have to, from a law standpoint, put in the defense for her of not guilty, because now they have to prove that she is guilty. So I guess personally, me as a judge, I would have been like, guilty. Then we'll prove that you're not guilty. I wouldn't do that. Also in August, Lori's attorney asked the judge to send the case back to a grand jury because they said that the conspiracy charges were, quote, oddly constructed and could confuse a jury, end quote. On September 23rd, Judge Stephen Boyce had banned cameras from the courtroom because he said that images could prevent a fair trial. No still cameras, no videos, no nothing in the courtroom, because I don't want this to interfere with the trial. Then on January 7th, 2023, we are into 2023 lambs. Judge Stephen received a request from Lori asking if she could see her husband. And the attorneys wanted them also to be able to speak on the phone to discuss strategies and settlement options. And they also requested that the hearing be delayed until 2024 and that the death penalty be taken off of the table. And the judge said, well, they're not going to meet face to face. Absolutely not. That's the one thing I know he definitely said from that request. On March 2023, it was deemed that 2 trials would be held, which was what Chad's attorneys had asked for. They wanted 2 different trials to be held so that whatever came out of Lori's trial wouldn't intertwine with Chad's verdict. So they scheduled Lori's trial to start on April 3rd, and they didn't give Chad a date when his was going to start. On March 21st, the judge made his ruling and decided to remove the death penalty from Lori's case because of newly instated evidence, which was DNA evidence, but it was too close to the trial for it to be tested and admitted into court. So he decided because of this, he was going to remove the death penalty from Lori's case. And on April 3rd, Lori's trial started. I guess they pushed it back too much, and he had said April 3rd, and April 3rd is when it started. In late March, 1,800 potential jurors had come into the courthouse, and each of them were required to complete a 20-page questionnaire. Then on April 3rd, attorneys began selecting 18 potential jurors, and ultimately it boiled down to 12 jurors and 6 alternates. On April 10th, opening statements were made. And on May 12th, the jury found Lori Vallow Daybell guilty in the murder of her 2 children, 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ. She was also found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and the death of Tammy, and she was also found guilty of the Social Security fraud. That didn't take long. That was about a month and 2 days. And they were like, nope, guilty. That's it, guilty. We don't need anything else, guilty. On June 2nd, Judge Stevens set Chad's trial date for April 1st, and he was the one overseeing Lori's case too, so he'll be overseeing Chad's case. That's later on this year that his case is going to go through. So I'll set that to give an update in April. On July 31st, Lori was sentenced to life without parole. She was also given a 10-year sentence for grand theft, as well as ordered to pay more than $50,000, which was a civil penalty for each of the 3 victims and restitution to the families. Quote, you had so many other options. You could have gotten divorced. You could have found someone else to take care of those kids. And as the state was able to prove at trial, you chose the most evil and destructive path possible. This is what Judge Stevens said at her sentences. Quote, you justified all of this by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole, and clearly you are still down there. In November, Lori was extradited to Arizona to face murder charges there as well. Wow. So she's going to get life on top of life on top of life on top of life. But then again, they could say death penalty. It was only Idaho that took the death penalty off, so she could get death penalty in Arizona. Quote, we've waited over 4 horrific years for her to face trial of murdering my sweet, kind, generous, loving, and dearest brother, Charles Vallow. Your justice is finally coming. This is what Kay said. On December 7th, Lori was charged with conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Charles. They also accused Lori and her brother of trying to murder her niece's husband, Brandon Boudreaux. Now, Brandon was shot at in 2019 while driving near his home. she's just going around killing everybody. Her brother's just going along with it. Like, is she just telling him, he abused me, the kid abused me, that other kid abused me, this one guy abused me, and he's like, yeah, everybody, pow, 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 you abused my sister, pow, pow, pow. What is going on here? How are they just going around killing people? So she also faces a charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the case of Brandon Boudreaux, even though he was unhurt. Doesn't matter. You tried to kill him. She pled. Well, no, she didn't plead. The court entered her plea. So this is her game, just not pleading. But the court entered her plea of not guilty for both of those charges. And no trial date has actually been decided yet for either of these cases, but they should be decided in late February. And in 2022, Netflix had released a 3-episode documentary entitled Sins of Our Mother, mostly centered around this case from the perspective of the only child of hers that she had living, which was Kobe. I forgot about him. So that 3-episode documentary is from his perspective. What did y'all think about that craziness? Apparently, she's a freaking serial killer, and so is her brother. Allegedly. And I want to see what happens in Chad's case. Like, what are they going to bring out? What's he going to say? Oh my God, this was a crazy topsy-turvy up and down case. Oh my God. Now, if you were to go to the Patreon, I'm going to have a bunch of extras in there. There are a ton of pictures from this case, including Lori's crazy face where she's just smiling all the time. Like, what are you doing? Like, even when she was sentenced, she was still like smirking at the camera. Are you crazy? Which I guess being that she was found competent, not found competent, found competent, not found competent, I guess she was crazy. And although cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom, I do have updates on the trial. So, they didn't have cameras, but people were sending out, like tweeting out their updates, like this happens, this happens, this happens. So I have all the updates of the trial in our Patreon, patreon.com/loveandmurder. So I want to hear from you. I'm going to put out a poll asking you if you think that Chad was set up. Yes or no? Do you think he had anything to do with these murders? Do you think it was really a raccoon, or I don't know how he could be set up, like who texts from his phone? And investigators did do a dig of one of the pet cemeteries and said there was no raccoon in there, but they did point out that there was another pet cemetery on the property and they didn't dig that one up. So it's a possibility that maybe he was really talking about a raccoon, but just investigators didn't find the remains of a raccoon. So, poll question. For those of you who want to go take the poll in Spotify, do you think Chad was set up by Lori and Alex? Now, for those of you who don't want to take the poll, if you think Chad was set up, put an emoji of a raccoon in the comments below. If you think he did have something to do with the murder of JJ and Tylee, or at least helping to bury them, put a broken heart emoji in the comments below. And before I go, don't forget that an easy and free way to help out Love and Murder is by simply sharing this episode. Share with your mom, share with your brother, share with your sister, share with the creepy guy who told you that y'all have been married before even though you don't remember it. Please don't share with him. Share, 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 share. And as always, I end each episode by reminding you that it's all love and no murder, y'all. Bye. Hey, lamb. Yeah, I didn't forget. Before you go, don't forget to give me a 5-star review on the platform that you're on right now. Just go ahead and hit 5 stars. No, not the 4. No, not the 3. What? Why are you doing this to me? 5. Yeah, right there. 5 stars. Right there. And you can say awesome in the description box. Anything you want to say in the description, that is fine. Thank you for the 5-star review. Bye.